Welcome to the Boone Podcast. I'm Bret Boone, and today on the program, we're joined by a Boone Podcast alumni. He's a seven-time All-Star, two-time batting champ. He's a Hall of Famer. He's one of my best friends in the game. Ladies and gentlemen, Edgar Martinez. Edgar, thanks for coming on the program again.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
God, it was great catching up. It's always great catching up when we get to spend a little time together in Seattle. Didn't get to spend that much time, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Um, Hall of Fame weekend, you going?
Uh yes. Actually, it will be fun to be there and see all the festivities. I'm looking forward to it.
Hall of Fame weekend. For those of you just listening to the Boone podcast, Edgar was inducted in 2019. Um, this year it's Freddie McGriff, it's Scott Rowland. This is your fourth now as a veteran of the Hall of Fame. What's explain to the audience? You went through it. You didn't get in on a first ballot. You went through a long grind to get in. Freddie McGriff's waited a long time for this. Give me a little insight on what Freddie's going through and what he can expect this weekend.
Yeah, when you wait 10 years, it's a lot of ups and downs, and it's a lot of arguments about it. Why you should be in the Hall of Fame? Why not? In my case, was about the DH, and sometimes you see the numbers one year and they going up, and you go, it's like, oh man, I have a chance, and 1 year, 2 years later, they go back down and you lose hope. So it's a roller coaster when you wait that long. And, when finally you get the call that you made the Hall of Fame, is, you remember all those years, all the way back playing little leagues, all the people that help you along the way, and all the ups and downs. So it can be at a little emotional at times. So this time where he gets to the Hall of Fame, to Cooperstown, he's gonna have a lot to do. So his mind won't be able to think uh, leading to the day that they have the induction. But it's gonna be emotional at times, and a lot of satisfaction. We played this game for a long time. Since we're little and have dreams, and when you make it to the top, to that level, which is the best players are in Cooperstown, you go like, how that happened? How come I'm here? So very emotional, but a lot of satisfaction also.
Yeah, and I don't want to take anything away from Scotty Rowland. He's going to the Hall of Fame too, but I just think that you could relate a little more with Freddie. And you waited 10 years. Freddie's waited like 20. He's had like double the time. And
Yeah,
we both played against Freddie. And what a great player. Almost
yeah.
500 home runs, and it's a long time coming. One of the great guys in the game. And it's going to be cool watching him finally get his due. Um, what was it like for you walked into your first Hall of Fame dinner as a rookie? Now you're a salty veteran, but did it compare anything like being a rookie in the big leagues as a player? That first time in, when you got all the guys that have been in the hall that you've watched it and probably watched them do a lot of their speeches. You walk into that first dinner. What was it like being a rookie all over again?
It does feel like that. They have sections like, let's say, 3,000 heat table, the 600 home runs table, and, and right. So you are in between the best players in the game, and it's like being a rookie, but you look around and it's like, I mean, when I was there, it was like all the big names, Reggie Jackson's, you name it, Paul Molitor, and Hank Aaron. It was incredible, and it does feel like you're a rookie, but at the same time, it makes you feel like, I can't believe I'm here. So it's
I remember talking to you leading up to your induction and the grind of having to put that speech together and to go up in front of we talked about it last time you were on the podcast. I've only been to Cooperstown once, but I saw it, and when I was watching on TV, I always thought, oh, there's a few people on the grassy knoll in Cooperstown. Then I got there and I watch it. I'm going, it's like a sea of people all the way up the hill. It's way more. It does for those of you listening and watching the Boom podcast right now that have only seen Cooperstown on TV. It doesn't do it justice. You've got to be there to see. It's like Woodstock. What I imagine Woodstock would have been like. But what do you remember about that induction? Like you said, busy. You got a lot to do. Everybody's pulling for you. It's your time. As a veteran, you could probably sit back and enjoy it a little bit. But what do you remember most from your induction year?
One of the things that it kind of hits me was I you know how they do the parade.
Yeah,
Do the parade. I think it's Saturday, and you go in the car where you are. I was with Holly, and there is so many from Seattle with you know Mariners jersey that I was like, wow, this is incredible. I mean, like a lot of people, and when I was in this on the stage, and they mentioned my name. It was that chant, Edgar,
right.
and it was like it felt to me like everybody there was doing it, and but it was so many Mariners fan there. It was pretty cool. I couldn't believe it, and all over the town you walk around, and it was Mariners fans all over. But that moment when they introduced you and they did the chant, that was pretty cool, and I never forget that.
And also, and I know this is kind of a silly thing, but I think I don't know. I think it's a decent point. You talk about when it hit you. That's when it hit you for you. Hit you for you when they were chanting your name. You're at the Hall of Fame. You're on the stage. You're giving your speech. But then after, we all as players, we sign autographs, and sometimes a fan will come up to you and say, could you write the Gold Gloves or Silver Sluggers or batting titles in your case. But the first time you get to write that HOF, that's got to be another thing. Like, wow, okay, now it's real. I get to write Hall of Famer on my autograph. Was that another point? And I know it's kind of a dorky point,
Yeah.
but for a guy that's not in the Hall of Fame, it seemed like that'd be pretty cool if I get to ask to write HOF next to my name on the ball.
So the first time I wrote it, it's like, how should I write it? HOF 19 or 2019,
Right, right.
right? But it is it's a weird feeling at the beginning because I remember looking at some of the balls and people that some of the players that signed Hall of Fame, and when I look at it, it's like it's so natural. Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer, but when you do it the first time, first few times, you go like, should I be writing this?
Yeah.
So it takes a little time to get used to, but I mean, it's very cool. It's actually feels good.
This year, you glad you don't have to speak?
I'm so you know, when you don't have to speak, it's just so relaxed. You go and do some of the festivities that they said, the dinner and the cocktail parties and all that stuff. But yeah, don't have to worry about the speech. I have to practice that thing like 70 times to feel comfortable somehow, somehow comfortable. And it's still hard to do.
You know what Tommy told me? You know what he did? I don't know if I've shared this with you. Tommy told me before he did his speech, he flew to Cooperstown early, went out on the stage, and practiced in front of that field. And so he was taking it to a new level. You talk about practicing it 70 times. And when you think about it, we've all had to do speeches. We all go to events and you maybe speak, maybe a question and answer. That's one thing. But this is probably, you know, unless you're doing something now I don't know about. Probably the biggest speech you'll ever have to make in your life.
Yeah, it is. And you know what? I was panicking about it. It was, you know, that sometimes, like in the stadium, you talk and it's an echo in the back.
Right, right. Yeah. That's the worst.
And I had it on my speech when I retired, and it was so hard for me to kind of finish my sentence. So I was panicking about that, and I talked to the guys at the hall. I said, "Do you know if this speaker, the way it's set up, it have the delay?" And they say, "No, no, this doesn't have it." So I'm like, "Okay, good."
I
'Cause-
know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah,
In Seattle,
yeah,
I've done a few interviews after the game, just on the field, spur of the moment. Hey, talk about this. And you're right. It's the delay. And it's almost like you got to wait. You've already finished your sentence, but it hasn't finished coming out. So you got to wait for that. And you're
yeah.
all off. And you don't know how weird it is to the fans that sit up there and they have no idea what you're going through. But it's kind of a panic.
It is, and I it kind of always stop just to hear it, and it's so awkward. And but I was panicking about that, and when they said, "Hey, no, no worries here," I was like, "Okay, I'm good,"
The
because
pressure. Go ahead.
yeah, because the way I practice, I was writing, and I write, one uh, one time the whole thing, and I read it, and then I edit, and I read it, and so I did it so often that if I felt comfortable about it.
Right.
Uh, so it kind of diminished a little bit the anxiety that you have when you have to make that speech. I mean, it's in front of so many people, but definitely the practice helped a lot.
For people out there listening that have never been to Cooperstown, what's your favorite part when you go back? What's your favorite part of the whole experience? Is it a certain part of the museum? Is it the speech? Is it the parties? What's a must see for Edgar when he heads back to Cooperstown?
One of the obviously one of the cool part is the dinner, uh, because all the big name players are there, and they roast the new guys, and it's very cool. The induction, just going to the induction and see all those people, all the fans, you know, kind of happy for the inductees. It's always very cool. It's always very cool to watch how the fans, support some of the inductees. So that will be my two things, favorite things.
We got to play together two separate occasions, and that we were teammates. And I know Edgar the guy, and Edgar the man, and Edgar the teammate, Edgar the hitter. I know all those Edgars, and to me, you haven't changed one bit. And usually, when you get away from the game and we mature and we become uh, older gentlemen, and we've been there and done that, so many things in the game. We have so many life experiences. But if one thing has changed, is there anything that's changed in your life since that Hall of Fame day?
Um, I don't think it has, other than you get older faster. But events in your life is what it changed. My kids are getting older. They're getting, my last one is going to college, and the other one, it's like all of a sudden you go like, oh my goodness, my three kids are going to be out of the house. And that is a new stage for me and my wife. But other than that, nothing have changed. I mean, keep my same routines. I do the same things over and over every day. Nothing have changed other than, you know, events in my life are changing.
Okay, before we move on, one question. You got any piece of advice for Scotty Rowland or Freddie McGriff, or if you had one piece of advice, what would it be? A guy that's been through it.
I will give two. One,
Okay.
try to write it, the speech, and practice and practice and practice and practice. Don't matter, whether it's 50 times, 70 times, 100 times. But the more you do it, when you write it yourself, it's uh, it's easier to remember, and it flows easier. And then have somebody edit and give you, feedback, and say, should I change it or do this or that? Holly helped me a lot. I asked some of the writers to kind of take a look and kind of give me some advice. The other part, which is probably the hardest one, is just look around and actually make the effort to actually enjoy it, the process. It's hard because it's stressful, but there is you can enjoy it. Just look at the fans, look at what happened, and actually see it, so you can remember it, and share as much as you can with your kids and your family. That would be my advice. I think I was able to do that, and I'm I'm glad I did. So
You mentioned Holly, and this is probably a good choice for her to sit there and kind of be your audience and critique you. Could you imagine if you were writing your speech and I took the place of Holly? Would would we ever get it done? or or
no,
would it just be a never ending? We probably couldn't keep straight. You probably couldn't keep a straight face. I would have ruined your whole speech because we'd never get anything done.
oh, I know. I agree with you.
Um, Great seeing you at the All Star game. Always great getting to see Poppy. And
That
for
was
those out you, don't get confused. For the people out there listening, don't get confused when I say Poppy because everybody, is that Big Poppy? Is it David Ortiz? No, it's Edgar. And I always have to explain to people. I said Edgar's kind of the original Poppy. Big Poppy came on the scene, and they said it. A lot of the postseason heroics, it was Big Poppy. But and people go, well, he's Poppy. I said, yes, he's Poppy, and everybody that plays with him knows that Edgar is Poppy. So I don't mean to confuse you out there when I refer to Edgar as Poppy. A lot of times that's what I do. Um, it was always great getting to see you.
yeah.
First 3 days, it seemed like we passed in the elevator and we didn't get to sit down and uh, and kind of catch up. But the last day we did, and we talked off camera briefly about this, and I thought it was cool. We have busy lives and we're in and out of this game a lot, and we're doing a lot of functions within the game. But for me, and I think for you as well, the day right before the pregame ceremonies for the All Star game, and it was all the All Stars from 2001, and a couple. There was Jay was down there because of the festivities that happened afterwards. Danny Wilson was down there. Junior was down there. But getting to see Kazuhiro Sasaki, who I haven't seen in 20 years, Freddie Garcia, Nelly was in the room. Big Olerud was in the room. It's always fun seeing Johnny. But most importantly, our skipper got to be in the room, Lou, and who you've spent a ton of time with. I've spent a ton of time with. He means so much to so many players. And when we got put in that equipment room, it was funny. We all got called down because we had the pregame ceremony. They were announcing the 2001 All Stars, and they put us in the equipment room. I felt like we were in a shoebox, hidden away from everybody. But I got to sit on the couch with Skipper and kind of probe him a little bit and ask him some questions. It felt like it was 20 years ago. And then just let Lou go and he would tell the stories, and we're all in that room cracking up. After that time, even though it was 20 minutes, it was pretty special, and it brought us all back, I think, to some fun times that we shared. Did you enjoy it as much as I did?
I did. I mean, I was forward to see Lou. Haven't seen it since the induction. He was in my induction in the Hall of Fame, but that was the last time I'd seen it. So it's been 4 years, and I knew he was struggling with health issues, so I wanted to see him. And like you said, I mean, he's fun to watch and listen to. He knows so much about the game, but also he has so many stories, and he's part of a lot of those stories. So
he's, he's part of everybody's story. Everybody has a Lou story. And I'm sure, Edgar, it happens to you. I know it happens to me all the time. Give me
yeah,
a Lou story. I've got a ton of them, but we all do. And I'm sure people ask you, Edgar, hey, what's Lou like? What you got a story? And we all got stories.
I have I have some that I can say.
No, me too. You got to preface them.
Yeah,
We recently had Alex on the program, A-Rod,
yeah,
and he had a story, and it was similar to one of mine. When Alex said when he was a rookie, he got sent down for like the fifth time, and he just told the story about him going into Lou's locker in the old Kingdom, in that back locker, the skipper's locker, and I said, Alex, I got like three stories like that. I got sent down all the time too, but
yeah,
it is there's only one Lou Piniella. No one's I've met in my life, no one's even close. And it's just just a unique human being that ended up being one of my favorite people, one of my favorite baseball people I was ever around, and it happened to be my manager.
yeah. One time you remember Henry Cotto?
Yes, Henry, super utility player.
Yeah,
Early in my career in '92 when I got called up, Henry was that super utility player.
yeah. So Henry, this is probably, I mean, right after he got came to Seattle, and Henry Cotto is struggling. He's not hitting many balls hard. He's kind of soft, and he hit this weak ground ball to third base, and uh, Luke called me. He say, "Hey Edgar, come here." I'm like, "Oh." And he goes like, "Edgar, what has happened with Henry? It's like he's hitting with a marshmallow bat."
He's unbelievable, and it's just stuff he'd say that all the time. And sometimes, if you had a new player on the team and Lou just hanging around the cage, you never know what he was going to say, and you couldn't take him personally because that was just Lou. But you'd get new players on the team, and he'd say something, and the new player would look at you like, what is that? And I'd say, listen, don't worry about it. That's just Lou. That's just how he is. He'll just say stuff like that out of the blue. But that's what makes him him Lou. And you could too. And my relationship with Lou. I would yell at him. He'd yell at me for something in the dugout, like, "Hey Boone," and I'd say, "Lou, you forget how hard this is?" And he'd look at me and he'd go, "All right, son, I get it." But that was fast forward a few years later, where I was a veteran player, but that's the kind of relationship I had with him. And we never, my second time around, we never had a true argument, but we would go back and forth, and that's just was our relationship, and that's what I loved about it.
Yeah, that was the way to manage. I mean, one thing that I remember I heard from him was like, you know, he, he will tell you things right in the middle of the game, and instead of going private. And the reason was, he said, "Well, what about if I don't say it now, and next inning happens again? So you have to address it there, so the player don't make the same mistake again, and the other people listening, they don't make the same mistake." Uh,
Right.
so it was a way for him to teach and say, "You don't do this way," and he had to address it like that. That was his style. So it makes a lot of sense to me.
Can you imagine Lou managing in 2023
Oh,
with the players there? But a part of me thinks about that and thinks, well, the great ones are the great ones, and Lou would adapt. He would adapt to the players how they are now. But it is funny, his style, and it was. And I brought this up a lot of times. Lou Piniella was a man that if he respected you as a man, if he respected you as a player, he would take a bullet for you.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that literally, obviously. He would run through a wall for you. But if he didn't respect you in any of the two capacities I mentioned, man, it could be a long year for you, or you wouldn't be on the team for much longer.
No, no. I mean, he have to. He didn't have much of a patience for you know players that he just didn't do what it's supposed to do or work hard or things like that. He didn't have much patience for that. But it's not that he didn't care about that person as a person. It's just that he just had a hard time, managing that type of player.
Yeah, he needed guys that were men's men and had balls. Let's be honest, that's what he wanted, and he respected that. And standing up to him sometimes, he respected that.
Yeah,
But he's one of a kind. Here's a moment that I thought was cool, and we haven't talked about. We had our moment where we got announced the 2001 All Stars. It was great, and I remember we were walking down the tunnel, and I turned to Big Rude. I said, "Greatest regular season team in the history of Major League Baseball coming through." And Rude looked at me and goes, "Actually, that's true." And I said, "It is true. It's a special team. I know we didn't finish the deal, and it sucks. And we'll to the day we die, we'll probably be asked that question. That great '01 Mariners team. How did we not finish the deal?" And it's actually a double-edged sword. It's cool that we won, but there's a little bit of a negative connotation put to it because we didn't win the World Series. When you're that great, there's high expectations, and when we played as great as we did that year, uh,
yeah,
we've always got that, and that's something cool. I'll always be proud to say I was a part of that time in Mariner history, and I think you feel similar to me. But I
yeah.
thought this was cool after we got announced
Yep.
because we all know there's kind of a hierarchy in Seattle. It's Ken Griffey Jr. and it's Edgar Martinez, and they're kind of the pillars of the organization, and it's well earned. You played your whole career there and had an unbelievable, obviously Hall of Fame career. Kenny, the same. We know nobody has to talk about Ken Griffey Jr. in his career, but we all know there's Kenny, and then there's Edgar, and then there's the rest of us, and we just kind of fall in behind, and that's the way it is, and that's the way it should be. But I thought it was a really neat moment. All the things you get to do, Edgar, and all the special times in your life, Hall of Fame being probably one of the top. Uh, Everybody doesn't just get to throw out a first pitch for the All-Star game. And I thought it was really awesome that Bone, Jay Buhner, who spent his whole pretty much his whole career in Seattle, Dan Wilson, who pretty much spent his whole career in Seattle, got to catch the pitch. But the two pillars went out there, and it was you and Kenny. And I thought it was a nice moment, and it was a fitting moment after 22 years ago the All-Star game was there. Me and you were teammates on that All-Star team, and then fast forward to just the other day, you're throwing out the first pitch at the next All-Star game in Seattle. Maybe you didn't think it was that. I don't know. I don't know what you think.
I,
That's why
I,
I'm asking you. But I, as a teammate and player that was on that field for this All-Star game and in 2001, I thought it was really cool watching you two do that.
it's been in the top of my list of things that I thought that was like really cool. Definitely going out there with Junior was so much fun and honor. And have Danny and Jay cashing. I agree with you. This is one of the coolest things. You know, I know for me, one of the coolest things that I have done. And it was cool. It was cool. I really love being able to do that with Junior and the guys and Jay and Danny.
Well, Poppy, enjoy the festivities coming up. I'll be watching it on TV, but have a great time out there and have a great time out there as a veteran that can let your hair down and you don't have any pressure to do anything. But have a
I,
good time. Love you, you know that. And I always appreciate you coming on and spending a little time with us and this year. we talked about
Thank
the
you.
Hall of Fame. But awesome. Have a great trip. I'll see you soon. I'll probably be out there later in the summer. And for those of you listening to the Boone podcast or watching the Boone podcast, I appreciate you listening and watching. And we'll see you next time.
All right.